preservation of freedom and democracy. Mr. Loxley?
Well, that's a big job, and a lot of Caymanians pitched in there to do it, and we see the results here today that we're so, I guess, fortunate to be able to live in the freedom that we do, And thanks to you, Sterling, for helping us facilitate this program. And what we and other listeners and viewers, of course, we're on YouTube also, are going to be treated to today, and this is a little Cayman lingo here, is a saltwater, coagulated, homogenized bird's eye view of the defense and preservation sacrifice and dedication to the defense of freedom and democracy by Caymanians during democracy's most perilous and dangerous times, World War I, World War II, and onward. And even, I think there are some reports that it goes back further than World War I.
Mm-hmm. That's the interesting thing, as you have dug into the, what do you call it, the Wattle Vault, or if I would say it fast, the Wattle Vault, we would be in a position to appreciate that championing of freedoms, preservation and promotion of democracies, and the Caymanian psyche, ethos, and what I think is evident within us. So in the studio today to help us sort of paint that picture is a gentleman that we all honor, respect, and love and admire, not only his country's debt of gratitude towards serving in the military forces, his stands within our parliament as Honorable Anthony Eden. Sorry, if you would be so gracious, maybe a brief intro, even though none is needed, in a special welcome and good afternoon to you.
Thank you, Sterling, and I want to thank Mr. Loxley for inviting me to participate in this wonderful meeting about old-time and original Caymanians from the seaman side and the military. As most people know, I'm from Lower Valley, one of the descendants of the Pedro Castle Edens, and went to school here in Cayman, high school, finished high school, and I, as usual, back in those days, at the tender age of 17 years, I went to sea, my first trip, and I was out there for almost 2 years. It was a special time for me and a learning time, and you learn to appreciate what all Caymanian seamen went through to put this country in the enviable position of being one of the best places in the world to live. And I'll go into more details on that, but after finishing my term at sea, I said I'd try something different. So I then went into the military, United States Army, enlisted in 1967. I was there for 3 years, did my basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana. I don't know if any of you guys may have heard about that, and went there. It's quite an experience going through basic training. The literal shaved my head, and the hair has never grown back.
That's one of the first things they do.
The first things they do, and but the discipline that being in the military has brought to me, and also the 2 years I was at sea, it has benefited me my entire life. It is a discipline that I live by, that I try to impart to my children, to my country, and I'll go into more details later on some of the things where I went. But it was good to be here with you guys, and yeah, like I said, the admiration I have for Mr. Loxley, as you Sterling said earlier, the energy he has, it reminds me of my wife and the Energizer Bunny. Cayman appreciates you, and used to hear your voice on Radio Cayman, and it was so much about Cayman. You really made this a special place for all of us, and Sterling is now following in your footsteps. He has some most interesting discussions on there, and it is guest during this hour, but it's good to have us here and for you to be with us, Sterling.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Eden, I spoke with Captain Dale this morning, And I told him, I said, I got Mr. Eden to come in. He says, holy, he says, I tried that for years and years.
That's true.
But that's Captain Dale Banks, of course, president of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association Emeritus. I think that's the right word. And he may be listening in this morning. Captain, hope you're doing well. And but you mentioned your seafaring and the military, and really, in 90% of the Caymanian context, those two are so closely linked that it's
one and the same also.
Yes, one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we go back to during World War I, records, U.S. Army draft records show that there were over 250 Caymanians listed on that, and they were seamen listed on that list that were eligible for the draft. Now, I would say probably maybe only 10 or 15% of them got drafted, but the other ones were also serving in a military environment at sea.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really they're so closely linked that you can't really separate one from the other. And we're hopefully also that our president of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association, Mr. Andrew McLaughlin, will be in here with us, hopefully. So, Andrew, if you're out there, speed up, boy. Fall in, eh?
Chop.
Well, we'll get on with the program here. So, let's get right to the program. There are reports that Caymanians was a member of the Teddy Roosevelt Rough Riders during the Spanish-American War. And that is at the turn of the 18th century into the 19th century junction. In World War I, 1912 to 1918, there were two brothers from, Sterling, whether you're familiar with where this is,
Very much so.
From Yam Peace in West Bay, who served in Europe in the British Army and during combat missions. They were even awarded commendations for their dedication and bravery. But apparently, what we can get hold of, they weren't even aware that they had received these commendations until about 8 years later, a British warship pulled into Georgetown Harbor to deliver their medals and ribbons. And they had once it was the community found out, but they apparently had a big to-do, as the old folks say, right down there where the museum is at now, which used to be the courthouse, which was where a lot of public, sessions was held. And of course, one of them, I believe, became a member of the police force. He might have even went up to the head of the police was called at that time. But he didn't. I guess it didn't really appeal to him too much. He went back out to sea, as did the other brother. And of course, their names were Huel and Kyvie Yates from up in Yam Peace in the Mount Pleasant West Bay area. So it's a great service that Caymanians have put forward to preserve freedom and democracy, which we enjoy here today. And Mr. Andy, I'm afraid too many people take it for granted. They don't realize the sacrifice and service of Caymanians to really guarantee that. I mean, just turn your thoughts to if the Nazis had won the war.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and in that same vein that people don't quite understand what happens when you look at the great United States, used to be the epitome of this nationalism and thing. The way that they treat some of their veterans now, it's just mind-boggling, and it's sad for one of the greatest countries in the world. The way that it's happening there, most unfortunate.
A lot of stuff going on over there that really pains me, but.
If I might, not necessarily for today, but borrowing from you, Mr. Eden, being influenced by your perspective, I know that is something that's been shared maybe as a country, and however you want to define that, but from the Cayman context. Take an example of how veterans are being treated globally, but in particular a strong connection to the U.S. Maybe we don't follow suit, and maybe we start to show deference not only to them, but to our own who speak publicly, or parliamentarians who stand for a cause that may run counter to external influences, but they're speaking to what is the cultural nuances and the ethos, and have that sense of respect and conviction that speaks to what it is that has sort of preserved, positioned us to where we are, so that as we promote it, we can also champion that healthy sense of democracy and show respect for those who have, as we look at this weekend, who have given their all, and not let it just be something that is just another checkpoint on our to-do list. Ms. Loxley.
Yeah, well, I think there's a great void in our educational system relating to just what you just said. Because I'm sure, Mr. Eden, I think that probably when you went to high school, you probably didn't get much about the Caymanian, what we're talking about here today, sacrifice.
There's literally nothing, whether it was because of the size of the numbers compared to other places, but very, very minimal stuff was taught.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess I was ahead of you.
A couple of days.
Going through school, but I remember learning that I think it was Garibaldi. He was a great Italian general, but I never heard anything about, and at that point, well, that was after, I would say after World War II, I never heard anything about Andrew Henning, who went ashore in Normandy with the 101st Division, and for 11 months fought their way all across Europe into Germany and surrendered the Nazis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew him, I knew of him, and I've seen him, because he came back from the war and went back to sea, and I think he didn't live what I would call a long life. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that I think are very lacking in our educational system.
And I mean, to see that contribution as you shared that story with him, was he one of clearing the minds within, and the other one as well. We talk about that, so much in our history, and that just left to fall away.
Yeah,
the story is not being told,
and many of the stories are gone because they were stored in the hard drive between people's ears. and they're gone. The stories are gone. It's but hopefully, I think they're working on getting that aspect of the educational curriculum fixed. But hopefully that they will soon. So.
Talking about working on it, this is from a different aspect, but probably one of the greatest resource persons that I know there is Miss Mary Lawrence from Bordentown. Mm-hmm. The wealth and knowledge that lady has, it amazes me why she is not being utilized, because she knows across the board not only about this, but all about the original old-time Caymanians and how we came and where we are, and they are still striving to put forward the heritage of the Cayman Islands and the military aspect of some of our Caymanians way back in those days. She can get information on that for us and bring it forward.
Yeah, she has a wealth of information, and like you say, it pains my heart that no more prominence isn't being paid to that aspect from an official capacity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And basically, Miss Mary, you might be listening. You got to come in here with me and talk about the press in Cayman over the years. So, and
absolutely, yeah.
It's but
I take comfort in the new minister. I think it's Mr. from your district, Loxley, Mr. Bush, Bernie Bush. He's already came out to visit or display up in Bordentown at Nurse Joseph's Senior Center, and that has the hugest, biggest collection of any artifacts on the Cayman Islands going back many, many years. And the effort the ladies put in up there, I mean, and this is being literal things, taking money out of their own pocket and dealing with this.
Anyway, Do we need to take a commercial break,
Yes, sir.
DJ? It seems so. So why don't we go to commercials right now, and we'll come right back to the program.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza, open Monday to Friday 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Are you planning a social, an office party, or event over the holiday season? Make the most of your holiday party and leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway Box to Go with the option of a 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. Cater your holiday parties with Subway. Visit subway.ky for menu options. Subway, eat fresh.
Come on, Cayman. Let's get ready to reopen. Countries all over the world are proving life can go on and we can safely coexist with COVID-19 in our community. With open borders, our readiness will be vital to protect each other and our islands. We can do this. Have your voice heard and pledge you are ready to safely reopen. Visit reopencayman.com. Join the movement and pledge that you are ready to reopen on November 20.
Brand Source Home Gallery is celebrating their 52nd anniversary with a 15% off store-wide sale this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday only. Yes, 15% off everything in store. Appliances, vanities, sinks, housewares, mattresses, plumbing fixtures, barbecue grills, and more. Brand Source Home Gallery store-wide sale, 3 days only. This Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Hurry! Don't miss this opportunity to save 15%. Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park. Call 949-5211.
The technology sector is forecast to be one of the fastest growing industries in the next decade, with more jobs available than skilled people to fill them. Enterprise Cayman is helping to fill this void and grow the next generation of Caymanian innovators, giving young people access to high-quality learning experiences with the opportunity to pursue careers in technology and innovation sectors. Learn to code, how product development works, enter professional competitions, access high-tech resources, network with special economic zone industry professionals, and much, much more. Visit enterprisecayman.ky to find out more. Brought to you by Cayman Enterprise City.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Well, as you can hear, I'm not Sterling, but he's right here. So we're going to move on with the program here. And we talked about up through World War I there a while ago. But now we're going to move on to the period from World War I up to World War II. And we're going to hear from Captain Keith Tibbets of Cayman Brac about his dangerous journeys and dangerous experiences during World War II. So, DJ, I think we can bring that cut up.
And now, during this period of remembrance of Caymanians and others who served in the British and United States military forces during the great conflicts and in the dangerous periods of preserving the peace, the Cayman Islands Veterans Association presents from the CI Retro's Wattle Vault this short narrative by Captain Keith Tibbets of Cayman Brac, who served under the British military command, his dangerous encounter during the Dunkirk evacuation in the May-June period of 1940. The captain speaks.
Dunkirk, and we took 5 lifeboats in tow. It had 95 people in them. They were off. Other ships had already been torpedoed, or bombed rather. We towed them back to London. But I, as one of the gun's crew, I was manning a 12-pound anti-aircraft gun from 5 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon without a break. And I can assure you, I fired my part of shells because I fired over 3,000 shells that day. But I never lied where maybe got in London that evening, that night. We went and had a good drink out that night, a crowd of us, so we were all right.
Cayman Islands veteran and seafarer Captain Keith Tibbets of Cayman Brack, firing over 3,000 shells in a 10-hour setting in defense and preservation of freedom and democracy. The preceding CI Retro's Wattle Vault gem was brought to you by the Cayman Islands Veterans Association in cooperation with Breeze Radio and Radio Cayman.
Well, you heard Captain Keith Tibbets there talking about just one of his experiences, because he was sailing the oceans along, I think most of world, I'd say all of World War II, and Andrew, 12-pound shell. How big is that? Or you haven't seen one?
I don't recall seeing a 12-pounder.
But I was trying to visualize it, what I'd seen, and I think a 12-pound shell is probably about the size of that is in circumference about the size of a gallon bottle, and it stands probably I'd say 2.5, 3 feet.
So it's slightly bigger than a Mazda Miata.
yes. But firing over 3,000 shells that day, and that was in one sitting in a gun turret, during the Dunkirk evacuation. Mr. Eden, you got any thoughts on that?
No.
But as you sort of allowed us to listen to that clip, Mr. Loxley, you're taking people from an island who probably ancestral links, fishing, farming, and the like, but immediately an ethos for them is to volunteer without being asked to jump up and say, here, use me, I want to be a part of this side in order to promote and protect the thing which I know to be. And then they go off, take the basic training, offer themselves, serve in a valiant way without asking for anything, risking their lives knowingly, and then having this experience and to come back and tell us about it. It behooves us to listen, but also to act, so we don't repeat that in our shore, in our region, or even in our lifetime, and more importantly, that our children don't experience that sort of threat. And yet we sit by, thumbs in our eyes and hands over our ears and our mouths quiet, not listening, not doing, Mr. Eden.
Absolutely.
And it's still going on, because just recently, I think Mr. Burton, I think that's his name, from West Bay, he had just mustered out of the Army after 4 years, the U.S. Army. He was home here about 3 months ago. I had the opportunity to speak with him, and I told him I wanted to get him involved in some of these things, but we just couldn't seem to pull him in here, because he's got a job and he's working. But
if I could ask that, because you referenced him, like Andrew and others after, these are young men and women who are still serving today. We're not talking with great deference to the 50s, 40s, 60s, Korean or Vietnam wars. We're talking today. Not even Desert Storm in the 90s. We're talking today. People still actively serving, carrying on that tradition. I wonder what is it about that has drawn us to see, that should be evident, but drawn us to military service.
Well, really, from my standpoint, I think it's just you want to call it
a calling.
A calling, or and it may be in our DNA or hereditary being, because there's another gentleman, Mr. Borden, and I can't come up with his first name, but who was actually stationed at the Pentagon over the last couple of years. Andrew, we had him out here for our gala one year.
A couple of years back.
Yes.
Barbara Connolly's nephew.
Yeah.
Well, no. This is could be.
Yeah.
Barbara Connolly's
yes,
nephew.
Yes.
He was a guest speaker at our gala.
Yes. And he was serving in Pentagon. I believe he's major now, or I think he was major when he came out here. So he's probably lieutenant colonel or general.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I mean, and he grew up. He told me right there. He was Captain Benny's, Captain Benny's grandson.
Okay.
Yeah, he grew up right there on the Cali. On the Cali wreck.
Yeah. The only people I can equate that understand that calling is a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about a soldier and a teacher, right? They both make a large impact on the world, but they're both usually underpaid, underappreciated, and you don't think about them until some years later, yeah? Because everybody has that one teacher. There's a teacher in your background that somehow touched you and pushed you to be more than you thought you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the soldier's the same way. We don't think about it until freedom is at risk. Then we look at the sacrifices that people made to keep it there, and we ask them to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's being said here should be taken to heart and disseminated within the educational system for our young folks.
Mm-hmm. So hail out to all teachers.
Yes.
We love you.
Loxley touched on what drives you to go there. Of course, my first step was going to sea. And once again, as I spoke earlier, the discipline that brought about for me and the benefits that back in those days, when I was 17 years old, to go out there getting $97 US a month. If you tell the young people about that today, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Plus, not bragging, I was able to send home $50 a month to my mother in what, as you know, they call it the allotment.
Mm-hmm.
But that discipline then transferred when I had the opportunity to enlist in the military, and this was during the Vietnam conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a situation going on that happened there, as most of you, I don't know if you'll remember, when the North Korea captured the Pueblo.
Yeah.
That was when I was, I went through my basic training, as I said, at Fort Polk, Louisiana, where you learn your shooting. I was awarded marksman, and then AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. I was then sent to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana. Those of you that may know that at that time was the largest building, the second largest building only to the Pentagon in the United States. All of the world's military finance people were sent to that base, and I stayed there, got my training, and then I volunteered for Vietnam, but they didn't send me, and so they sent me to Korea. I was over there on Camp Casey, just I think about 5 miles from the DMZ, 30th parallel, which is the division between North and South Korea. At that time, they were pouring over 5,000 troops a day into Korea just to be preemptive. Thank goodness it didn't come to anything. But once again, the discipline and the show of force in times like these, which is, with all due respect, dreadfully lacking in this day and age of people that are in control. You need to put up that show of force to deter, not necessarily to get involved. And this is what we need to be looking at. I spent 1 year over there, and I don't know if those of you that have been in cold weather, I have never in my life seen cold like that. And in those days, we didn't live in buildings or anything, but Quonset huts. And unless you lived right next to the space heater, you were literally freezing. But not only that, the restrooms and the thing in the night were hundreds of feet away, and it was unbelievable. Finally, in coming back to my reassignment at Fort Hood, Texas, I sat in Kimpo Air Force Base for 3 days and 3 nights. I thought I couldn't sleep sitting up. There was so much snow on the ground there at Kimpo Air Force Base that we couldn't leave, but you couldn't go back to the base, so I just sat there and suffered. I'll talk more on...
I mean, that's a vivid description of a soldier, and you see how the sailor, you know, how they all connect, you know, and all of us, I'm sure, have experienced something, you know, similar in our journeys. I don't know how much commercial DJ do we need to take a commercial break, or Yes, so we'll take a commercial break and then we'll come back to the program here.
Savannah Pharmacy. Shop local and get a head start on your Christmas shopping. For ladies' handbags, clothes, shoes, fragrance, candles, and cosmetics with the newest Farmhouse Fresh line of skincare. For the gentlemen, clothes, shoes, fragrances, gift sets, and toys and games for the kids. Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs. And convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045. Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
New stock has just arrived at Super Stitch. Now don't take my word for it, drop by and see for yourself. Fresh off the boat, we have loads of fabric, vinyl upholstery fabric, fabric for cushions, outdoor fabrics, and dress fabric. That's not all. Super Stitch has sewing accessories and craft items. Included in the new shipment, you will find sheets, comforters, throw pillows, bath mats, rugs, and curtains for every room in your home. Super Stitch, 39 Pasadora Place, Smith Road. Still offering the best price in town. Call 949-2833 or go to superstitch.com.ky.
Here's where you can get your Rotary Central Music Extravaganza tickets to win $40,000 and more. Rotary members, authorized ticket sellers, eventpro.ky, A.L. Thompson's Home Depot, Funky Tanks, Rubis, Walker's Road. Here is where your support for Rotary Central Music Extravaganza works for our community. $50,000 committed to Loud Silent Voices, a mental health service, a Rotary Central signature project. The Lightning Cleanup Brigade at the Botanical Park after Tropical Storm Grace. $5,000 in support for the Cayman Islands Crisis Center. Support for the Bridge Foundation Halfway House. Supporting Bicycles for the Needy. Supporting the Cayman Islands National Disaster Fund. Rotary Music Extravaganza Community Service at its best. Funding over 70 projects since 1995. Rotary Central, Cayman Islands, registered not-for-profit number 232. Rotary Central, serve to change lives.
Study local and go far this spring. Want to start your bachelor's or associate degree or just need a few classes to complete? Registration is now open for spring classes at UCCI. Scholarships are available for the spring semester, but you need to act now to meet the deadlines. Visit www.ucci.edu.ky to enroll now. Classes begin January 10th. Enroll by December 1st for a chance to win an iPad or a laptop.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And we continue on this Caymanian military journey, and we move from the English Channel to the South Atlantic, Caribbean region. And we hear from the late Mr. Harry McCoy, who I'm sure both of you gentlemen are very familiar with, who served in the Royal Trinidadian Navy during World War II. And here he is speaking with the late Dorian Miller, former Deputy Director here at Radio Cayman and Senior News Editor. And also, he was a member of the Cayman Islands Home Guard. Dorian was. So here a short 2-minute cut with Dorian and Mr. McCoy talking about Mr. McCoy's service in Trinidad.
Mr. McCoy, were you exposed to any danger at all being based in Trinidad?
Well, while at sea, yes.
because doing this anti-submarine work and doing escort or convoying duties, we were exposed. Outside of the harbor of Port of Spain, it was stated that more ships were sunk just out there than any other part of the Atlantic, because convoys were brought in and convoys taken out, and the submarines just laid around there to get those ships. I've seen a number of them torpedoed. We had to go out there. Our duty really was trying to sweep these there. When I say sweep, we were sweeping with anti-submarine sounding devices so as to warn ships and to try to help disable ships, And I remember one ship which was being towed. We were escorting that ship when we received a signal from a destroyer, the old Churchill, saying clear the area of the target. And before we could even maneuver, that ship that was being towed was torpedoed. And the tug that was towing her almost went down. She went to where she was, I would say, probably about 35 degrees, with a bow of water. And one of the men, Ed Tatum from the outside, he's down a dead poor fellow, he took a fire axe, and where that wire was running over a bollard, one chop, and he chopped that away. Otherwise, the ship would have carried that tug down.
The preceding was an excerpt from a Radio Cayman's CI Retro program, which focused on the dangers Caymanians faced during World War II, serving in many military operations. Speaking were Dorrin Miller, former Radio Cayman's Deputy Director, along with Mr. Harry McCoy, former Royal Navy Petty Officer, and former member of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association. Remember, some gave some, and some gave all their lives. Get your poppy and remember.
Well, that was just a brief little conversation there with Mr. McCoy, who I think all of us around the table here was very, very familiar with. And now his description of the Tatum from Northside, and I'm not sure how many of you all out there are listening know what a fire axe is, but on board of every ship there's a fire axe, and it's razor sharp, I think. But you can believe that cable that they were towing that ship was probably 1.5 2 inch, maybe even 3-inch cable, and in one chop he chopped that away. I mean, he could have chopped down, and we to harness the energy of what went in that one chop, he could have chopped down half of Ross here.
Mr. Howard Force?
Mr. Eden?
I would just like to draw the comparison of having served as a seaman and as a military soldier, that the different type of dangers in comparison in going to sea. I'll never forget going up, and I'm sure most of you will know in here, about the North Atlantic in winter. I was on a boat or transport. There were 3 of them that built to go through the ice, or transport, or Chieftain, or Titan. But I remember specifically on one occasion going up there, the seas were so high that one of the cruise ships a few miles from us, many people died because the weather was so bad. And some of my St. Vincent colleagues, they were actually crying. They thought the boat was going to sink. We were loaded with 65,000 tons of iron ore coming through the ploughing and going through those seas, breaking over everything. There are times you could almost see the sea. Whereas in the military, it may be a slower and a more specific way of going, but if you go in combat, as Andrew would know and understand, and that you're standing the risk of being shot and killed instantly like that, and from times that you don't even know where's it coming upon you.
Yeah, it's as I was saying before, the Caymanian seafarer and the Caymanian military person, they're so closely linked together. Yes. in all phases. If you look at Andrew, I'm sure you got something to say about that.
Yeah, I have served on the aircraft carrier and several other ships. So they were usually one and the same, and I know that many of the seamen were given veterans benefits after the wars were over by the United States and other countries. So usually, like you said, they're one and the same.
Well, we're coming up to news time here, and if these clocks are right, I don't think we have time for that 1500 cut. Can we play it? Okay, well, here's a shortcut from the captain of the Corsair. Now, that was a ship, troop carrier, some degree, that took the Caymanians from here to Trinidad or wherever. I think they were doing some of their training in Jamaica. That he, I think, left with the Caymanian people when one of those voyages were departing Hogstye Bay in Georgetown.
And here, U.S. Air Force retired Captain Dale Banks speaks of an occasion relating to Caymanians and the Royal Trinidadian Navy contingents.
Someone sent me a copy of an address by the captain of HMS Corsair to the 2nd contingent of Caymanian volunteers the day before they left Georgetown to join the Trinidad Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve in 1941. And if you allow me to just read this because it's touching, really. This was the captain's address. He said, "To you all, I want to say that what a privilege and honor it is to be allowed to say a few words on this historic occasion. I say this in no light way, as a page of history is being written this day in Georgetown. To the men, I know these young recruits, the flower of the Caymans, will do well. They are known to be born seamen and are joining the finest service in the world, the Royal Navy, which now, as ever in the past, acts as a security for such as pass on the seas upon their lawful occasions. We in the Corsair are very proud to be associated with the transport of the 2nd contingent, and you people of the Caymans may also be proud of your wonderful record. Your young men are joining the great host of a band of brothers from all parts of the empire, coming to offer their services to their king for the safety, honor, and welfare of the empire, upon which, as you know, the sun never sets. To the women, mothers, wives, and who knows, possible sweethearts, I say this: your part is perhaps the harder one, the watching, waiting, and praying. But never forget that your men are leaving all that they hold dearest for a just and honorable cause, like the Crusaders of old, to uphold right against might, and the cause of the weak and downtrodden. And when we leave at 8 o'clock tomorrow, may the last glimpse these gallant Crusaders get of you is a face with a smile on it. And if there must be a tear, let it be a tear of happiness, if there be such a thing, and not a tear of sadness. Goodbye, and God bless you."
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Water Authority Cayman advises that the eastbound lane on Dorsey Drive near the Shedden Road Dorsey Drive roundabout will be closed to facilitate emergency repair works. The works in the vicinity of Kirk Motors began at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, November 11th, and will continue until further notice. In international news, AstraZeneca has started to move away from providing its COVID-19 vaccine to countries on a not-for-profit basis. The drugs giant has signed a series of for-profit agreements for next year and expects to make a modest income from the vaccine, it said. The company had previously said it would only start to make money from the vaccine when COVID-19 was no longer a pandemic. French prosecutors have opened an investigation into an alleged rape at the presidential palace in Paris. Local media report a female soldier has said she was sexually assaulted after a drinks reception at the Élysée Palace in July. The accused, also a soldier, has been questioned but not yet formally charged. U.S. Olympic gymnast Sunisa Lee has said she was pepper sprayed in a racist drive-by attack in Los Angeles. The gold winner and first U.S. Hmong Olympian said she and a group of Asian friends were targeted while waiting for a ride. Attacks on people of Asian descent have risen among the COVID-19 pandemic, which was first reported in China. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
As with much of history, historical facts tend to be passed along via the older folks and stories. One of the fullest early accounts of the settlement of Cayman Brac was given by H.W. Rutty, J.P., in 1908, which was gathered from the oldest residents. The first settlements were made in 1833, when 3 families bearing the names Rich, Foster, and Scott from Grand Cayman went to the Brac. Although others came from Grand Cayman and Jamaica, the present population in 1908 was composed of descendants of those 3 first families. Of the traditional founding families, the Fosters and Ryans have the fullest genealogical and oral records.
Information from this historical vignette was sourced from Founded Upon the Seas, A History of the Cayman Islands and Their People by Michael Creighton and the New History Committee.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
We may be in Christmas shopping mode, but 'tis the flu season too. Savannah Pharmacy has immune system boosters for the entire family with a range of vitamins and supplements. Their knowledgeable and courteous pharmacists are always available to offer the best advice and products. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Good and cleaner.
Now is the time, and we are ready to help you with your household cleaning needs. And that is bedspreads, comforters, duvets, duvet covers, drapes, and so much more. All items at 10% off prepay, and turnaround time will be 2 to 3 days. Orders can be handled at all 3 stores: Elgin Avenue, Savannah Countryside, Eastern Avenue, drive-through, rain or shine. All stores close at 5:30 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Call 949-7104. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
Well, you heard that, I guess it was a letter that the captain of the Corsair wrote to, the commander of the Cayman Islands and to the guys that was going off to Trinidad Navy at the time. And what struck me, one of the I guess, probably more emotional bits of it was when he made the mention to going away, leaving sweethearts and leaving, of course, families and so forth, so on. Mr. Eden, you got any thoughts on that?
It is so true. I mean, most of you will remember, I'm not sure about Sterling, the big congregation that would be at the airport when someone was going away. There's a lot of tears, and then on the return of that person coming back which was in the mid-60s, coming back, there was the same entourage at the airport welcoming them back, joy and all kind of gifts and presents for the youngsters, and it was special. But it was interesting, the clip you played there, bearing out what Andrew said in regards to the recognition of the military, of the veterans. It just seems that externally people look at how valuable contributions Caymanians make, whereas within our own society, it is not at that high level. I always take pride in when Mr. Long, and blessed memory, all of us know, when I was in the Ministry of Health, as Minister of Health, he and I worked so close in organizing and in raising and elevating the coverage, the healthcare coverage for the veterans and the seamen, and it was good that we were able to get that to provide for them, and but it bears out what Andrew said. Externally, if you look at the United States, all kind of benefits are given to them, and pensions and this and that. But we must recognize, because history can repeat, that if we don't do the right thing for those people.
Yep. Well, Mr. Russell was also a member of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association, and of course we can't forget Tom Jefferson. You
yes, he and I were in cabinet together, and I'm glad you mentioned Mr. Russell. I corresponded with him almost up to the time when he passed away, and he was a fierce warrior and representative for us in the UK. He actually brought down their administration of their Veterans Affairs to the ministry when I was there, and he was one of I know without a fair or successful contradiction, he was the best governor that these islands ever had.
Yes,
he really stood up for our people, a very likable person. He was out in the community, and it was a blessing to work with someone like him.
I'm sure everybody will agree with that, and both of them were prisoners of war.
Exactly.
One was on that famous railway, that was Governor Long.
Long.
Yes.
And
I think kind of skips my mind now where Mr. Russell told me he was, but so, and they were both staunch members of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association. Andrew, you got 10 seconds you want to pipe in, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I remember, we'd go away for 6 months to a year at a time, and but besides all the tears and everything, once you're there, you almost like an old VCR, you're on pause, but everybody else life is moving on.
Yeah.
So when you come back 6 months later, in your mind, you just left yesterday. But life has moved on. People have taken on responsibilities. The wife has to take on responsibilities that she didn't have. And everybody's 6 months older, and everything has gone on. It takes you a couple of weeks to get back into the groove of family life.
Well, mine would like to, when I left here in 1954 on the Murko, I was, friendly, very, very friendly with a beautiful little girl that lived there. Not little girl, beautiful young lady that lived on North Church Street. And believe you me, I rode up to Georgetown from West Bay on my bicycle the night before I was leaving. And she was going to come down to the dock, the old dock in Georgetown, to see me off. But anyway, I think her mom didn't want her to come down. And she related this to me later. She said, but I was on the iron shore waving my handkerchief. And of course, I left here in 54, 56. I was in the U.S. Air Force, and before I knew it, she had married someone else. So this kind of goes on.
Yes.
To what the captain of Corsair was saying, about loud winds leaving behind.
That's when you need those telegraphic eyes, Mr. Loxley, to see her in the distance.
Get one of those Dear John letters.
Yes.
And I guess Captain Banks, if he's listening, he'll probably have a big laugh on that one. Those Dear John letters. Well, we'll move on. Time's moving on here. And we'll travel across the ocean again to the North Atlantic, where Mr. Lee Smith was sailing under the British Maritime Military Command in 1940. What is it?
All right. So he's got that queued up for there. Okay. All right. But Mr. Lee Smith, was he also, as you related history, prisoner of war as well, right?
Yes. Along with, there were, I think, 5 or 4 from Cayman. There was Mr. Lee Smith. There was Mr. Eddie Frank. Mm-hmm. There was Mr. Eddie Frankton. Mm-hmm. And then there was another E. Banks. Can't think of his name now. And then there was Hulbert Bush. and Captain Lythan Ebanks is a gentleman, Hulbert Bush, and then there was I think another guy by the name of Johnny Ebanks, who was a prisoner of war in Japan. And I believe there were 2 Caymanians that was Japanese prisoner of the war, and then there was 2 or 3 people from Cayman Brac who were prisoners of war. But I believe we got that audio up now. So DJ, if you can move on to that.
Not just yet, sir.
Not just yet.
One, yeah. Some days, it's either Bluetooth or it's read back. Either way, sometimes it takes a while to get from A to B. So just in a few seconds, Mr. Loxley, respectfully, we'll get the audio queued up. I think he's transferring to 8-track to LP, and then you got to figure if he's at 17 or 33.
Or whether it's MP3 or
No, I think you're going back further than that. Just the wall to wall, So I think he's trying to get, there's a B side of the 17 or the 8 or the 33.
Well, I guess when we sat in this studio here many years ago with reel-to-reel tapes, and they didn't fail very, very often.
No. But that's the thing. And I say that partly to jest, but I'm glad you referenced that. We look to the new technology and the convenience, and almost not to be overly insensitive to today, but the immediacy that we want to be gratified with everything. We pop something into the microwave, and what was a dish that took days to prepare, we want in nanoseconds. We look at the microfiche when that first came in, and to look at data to what it is today. But even the recording and the presentation of information on audio, you said that old technology didn't fail. Well, we have digital things that, because of the connectivity, works instantaneously and reliably. But when it doesn't work, the reel-to-reel was the thing to do, right?
Oh yes, we could rely on that.
But is it like records back then, right? You ever played a 33 on 78, or you see what would happen, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now I know someone going, what are you talking about? World records? But Mr. Eden, times change, but sometimes we fail to appreciate the history.
Anything that you put music in, whatever number it is, since we're here in Radio Cayman Studios, I don't know if you guys ever listen in the night after 10:30 in the night, Monday through Thursday. I don't listen to Friday night. That's too much jump out stuff. But the music that JJ plays on there, it's hard to go to sleep listening to him. The selections, it takes you back to times like Loxley and Andrew talks about here, when Cayman was Cayman, and the way we lived, so unassuming and working along with each other, sharing and helping and uplifting everybody. There was always time to go visit and friends and anyone that was sick. That was part of our culture. Now, it's despite having transportation vehicles, we never have the time to go and spend, and that is what is so missing in Cayman. That there's nothing worse than loneliness. Nothing worse than loneliness, especially for our elderly people. And I would just wish that opportunity would present that we can do something concrete about it.
Yeah, and people would walk for miles and miles to visit each other.
Well, I can talking about walking. When I was there younger, and this is just 5-6 years old. My mother and father, brother and sister that was alive at that time, walked from Lower Valley to Savannah and back in that, and it was in 3 o'clock hot sun, It wasn't early or late in the evening, and you enjoyed it, and it made us better people. But they were special times for social bonding and talking and observing around through the cattle country and all that kind of stuff. It was so special.
I can remember waiting in line an hour or two for a 3-minute phone call when you were overseas.
Yes.
And the next guy is timing you because he wants 3 minutes.
That's right.
Yep.
And that call was important for you to connect up with folks back home.
But the whole family was ready.
Yep.
They know you were calling, and everybody was sitting by that phone so you could talk to everyone.
And the girlfriend was in the back trying to...
I'm not saying anything. Says Andrew.
Well, do we have that audio ready yet? Okay.
Soon come.
I think that one's coming with a Rambo, not a Goldfish.
But you mentioned about walking, Andrew, Mr. Anthony, and I don't know. I remember my father and Mr. Prentice Bell, Jimmy Bell, coming to Savannah one time, and we were tagging along with them. We were 6, 7 years old, 8 years old at the time, and I think they went to your father, who had some cattle, plenty cattle, and maybe one or the other, and they bought probably about 15 head of cattle, and taking them back to West Bay, and you all in Savannah was going to rustle them down from Savannah to where the old market was in Georgetown, and we were supposed to pick them up from there. And I remember coming up there, probably 12 o'clock, because I think that was the hour that they said we'd meet up. And it was about 15 head of cattle. We rustled them down to West Bay. Wow! On a mosquito night.
Oh yeah. Wow. I can relate to them, because when we, as you know, we raised a lot of cattle, and we used to walk from the Lower Valley carrying 15, 20 head of cows down to where the Hurley supermarket is. There was a place there that Carl Farrell and them owned there, and we used to walk them down, walk them back up, and it was amazing. And the safety, of course, it was in the cars in those days, but it was an experience.
Yeah. I mean, and going down the West Bay Road back in those days, and that was probably in about 1948, 49.
You talk about road. I came home from the Marines, and I had all my combat gear. So I'm going to help take the cattle up to the grazing grounds in East End. Let me tell you something. Those were combat boots that made it through combat action, right? And by the time we got through that cliff rock in East End, those boots were useless. The boots were cut up, but somehow these couple of 100-pound cows knew exactly where to step to get up through that cliff rock to the grazing land. Just unbelievable. So
I hope you didn't switch on those boots, Andrew. You remember that part of the military.
I learned a lesson that a lot of respect for the farmers.
You had boots. I run on barefoot in most of the so the protein was eating.
Ouch.
In between Maiden Plum.
The logwoods.
Just make sure you carry some pine oil when you go get into Maiden Plum. It's amazing what it does. It takes everything out of the blackness, everything, and the soreness. Wonderful stuff.
Pine oil, yeah. But we take for granted, and this is kind of why, I guess it's
okay, we've got that audio up, so we'll move on to Mr. Smith's account of his military journey, seaman military journey.
Listen now to seafarer Mr. Lee Smith, who in 1940, during World War II, was sailing under the British Admiralty Military Command, as he briefly describes the danger he faced.
I'll never forget, this voyage was from Australia. It was in the South Atlantic, between Cape Town, South Africa, and Sierra Leone, North Africa. We saw this, it looked like a bird on the horizon, and shortly after that, the captain got a signal saying, "Stop and don't use your radio, or we'll blow you out of the water."
So this was a message from the Germans?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was the Admiral Scheer, and in no time at all, this ship was alongside of us, told us to take our boats and get off the ship and proceed to the Admiral Scheer. And as soon as we got aboard, they torpedoed our ship. The Scheer took us aboard a supply ship, and we was on there for 3 weeks.
This is a German supply ship?
The German supply ship. We was there for 3 weeks. Then they took us to France. We spent 3 weeks in France, and from there to Germany,
where Mr. Smith was incarcerated in a German prisoner of war concentration camp for the better part of 5 years. At war's end, he regained his freedom and returned home and continued his seafaring career. He and his wife raised a family of 5 who today occupy prominent positions in our Cayman Islands community. The excerpt, which featured Mr. Lee Smith, is from a CI Retro's program on Caymanians' involvement in the defense of freedom and democracy during its greatest challenges.
Well, you heard that. Seaman to prisoner of war in Germany, and he came back home, and I think he went back out to sea, for quite a number of years. But And the other prisoner of war that I was thinking about from Cayman Brac was Elgin Scott. He lived in Port Arthur for a long while. But he told me the story. He was torpedoed. And, of course, the ship's fuel tanks ruptured. And when he got in the water, he was in a big pool of oil. And he was picked up by the Germans. Probably a ship was, following the submarine or whatever. And when he got aboard, what they did, they were all bathed in, covered in crude oil. They had a barrel of kerosene, probably really 110% kerosene, and they had to dive down in that to get washed off. I mean, and he came back from the war, and he lived in Port Arthur. He used to visit here quite often, and I think he went back out to sea. But think of all these experiences at sea, and we talk about dedication, DNA, and whatever, and they go right back out.
There's a tradition back in those days that once you get that touch of salt water on you, it's hard to stay home. I mean, men would go 3, 4, 5 years and don't come back, and then when they come back,
But Mr. Smith, and a lot of the other prisoners that were alive when Radio Cayman got started, we tried to bring them in, but none of them would want to talk. But we finally got Mr. Lee Smith, and we, said to him, it's important that we get some of this stuff. And he did come in, and I think we got about 15, 20 minutes of him, and he told about his time in the prison camp, and I don't think, we said this before, it's not realized by the Cayman Islands community, what preserved the freedom and the democratic way of life here that we enjoy. I mean, not only us or Caymanians, but the whole scope.
That is enjoyed in this country. And maybe not necessarily a time to discuss it now, but maybe if I could ask it, and maybe certainly be guided by your counsel. Not only are we not appreciating, but I'm wondering if the people who question publicly certain things, or who champion certain things, the status quo otherwise, not just that freedom to do so, but the importance of having that freedom to do so, and the courage, the tenacity, that determination, that calling to do so. I wonder if we are appreciative of the need to preserve that, to promote that, to encourage it, nurture it, so that people understand. If I can, as a parliamentarian, Mr. Eden, you with your colleagues, the House is convened, you're speaking to a motion, maybe it's a private member's motion, maybe it's a government bill, and you question and you ask and you're saying, listen, this could lead to this, or if we don't do this. For us as a community to understand the rights and privileges that are enjoyed within that hall, as well as on the outside, either assembled to support or assembled to oppose, or writing to the media, calling in to say those things. We don't seem to understand that.
No, we don't, and just to remind you, I'm an ex-politician.
Well, yeah. What do you say? Once an Olympian, always Olympian. So.
Well, that's true. It keeps going through. But one of the illustrations that I would like to draw to them, and earlier on, Mr. Loxley was talking about the leadership, and also Andrew, what was going on there. I would draw one primary illustration. To me, one of the greatest men that ever lived was Winston Churchill. When we look at what he went through, the suffering he went through in his own country, and if it wasn't for the type of person he was, with the backbone that he had, just tell these people that don't recognize what the veterans and the seamen, what they go through, to look at places like communist China, North Korea. How would we be living now, where they're rationing food, this, that, their offensive weapons has greater priority than feeding the needy? Just remind them to look around, look at how blessed we are in Cayman. if it wasn't for the protection of people like Winston Churchill, where would the Cayman Islands and the Commonwealth be?
Yes.
Who would be running the territories in those days? So it's very easy to deal with when you look at people and look up and respect them. You know, not to extend this back to the United States, but how in God's world, when you see policemen and they are being stoned for whatever reason, I mean, there was a question put on the voting a couple of weeks ago in Minnesota to do away with the police. Who are you going to send out to take care of criminals and crimes? Social workers, do you expect our social workers to be doing these kind of things? It ain't going to happen. It can't be done. They don't have the capacity or the training. So let's wake up. Let's wake up and make sure that Cayman never gets like that.
You know, and I take it back to just something that you said, or maybe Sterling mentioned, that we really don't take enough countenance of people with experience who speak about looking forward and what they think. And, you know, I wrote down Churchill just before you mentioned his name. You know, you think after the war, he said, you know, the Soviet Union is not very capable of doing anything now. Let's move in and you know, take care of them. Now, the British people defeated him in 6 months at the election. And later on, he mentioned in some of his memoirs that the British electorate had denied him the opportunity to shape a better world. And we mentioned U.S. Look at MacArthur. He was in Korea. And you might have been there with
no, I don't know.
Not quite that old. But he wanted to move on to Manchuria. He wanted to go into Manchuria and say, let's just, you know, tell these people what it's all about, and you know, and you see what's happening over there now.
Yeah.
And he didn't know it at the time, but Schwarzkopf could have walked right into Baghdad.
Yep.
He had 275,000 troops standing behind him, and Baghdad wasn't ready. He could have walked in and saved us all that trouble, the Iraq War.
Yes. Well, we got to move on, and I am told that we got some commercials that the folks need to hear. So, DJ?
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
At Subway, we caramel a lot about our customers, so we decided to give you 2 treats in one with the new Caramel Apple Cookie. Enjoy cinnamon apples, caramel bits, and salted caramel crunch baked in, and topped with a drizzle of caramel-flavored icing. Gooey, crunchy, and yummy. Complete your Subway sandwich, pizza, or salad with the delicious Caramel Apple Cookie or any other cookie flavor and dessert, available for a limited time at all Subway locations. Subway, eat fresh.
Dreaming of a great career or degree? The Caribbean Examinations Council offers regionally and internationally recognized qualifications to help you get there. These include the Caribbean Certificate of Secondary Level Competence, CCSLC, the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, the Caribbean Vocational Qualification, CVQ, Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination, CAPE, and the CXC Associate Degree. These exams may be done while in school or out of school at private learning institutions. Visit cxc.org to learn more. With CXC, you're in control.
You can now register online to receive a securely verified digital copy of your COVID-19 vaccination status with QR code through the MyHSA patient portal. Sign up is available online and at all HSA locations. All you need is your photo ID showing date of birth and an email address. Visit hsa.ky and click the MyHSA patient portal icon to get started.
Do you know how well your pension plan performed? Attend the Chamber Pension Plan's annual general meeting to stay informed and find out how you can achieve your desired retirement lifestyle. Members are invited to meet our trustees and take part in our question and answers segment on 1st December 2021 at 6:30 p.m. at the Chamber of Commerce Boardroom in Governors Square. Refreshments will be served. Please visit our website chamberpension.ky or email admin@pensions.ky for further details. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
20 years.
Remember when Crew Road had no median and Linford Pearson was only 2 lanes?
We do.
When Dirty Reeds was down the street?
We do.
We have been there for the falls, the growth, and the rise. When your body and mind needed to change, Powerhouse Gym has been here. We've skated with you. Your first date, your daughter's first time on skates, your son's first strike. From football to squash, to karate and hockey, to bowling and concerts, and everything in between.
For 20 years,
so much has changed, some for the good and some not so much. Through it all, King Sports Center has been here for you, for Cayman.
King Sports Center, celebrating 20 years as Cayman's home for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Do you want to serve your community? How about learning new and exciting skills? The Cayman Islands Regiment is now accepting applications for volunteers. Caymanian and permanent resident applicants should be between 18 and 50 with a clean police record. No military experience is required. Apply online at www.gov.ky/CI Regiment. Applications close on November 15th, 2021.
Listen to the general public. Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And we're back, and Mr. Eden, I think, will have to leave us before long. But Mr. Eden, getting back to your military career, anything else that you want to add, in that aspect?
Just to talk about briefly the time in Korea. As most of you know, that one of the big, at that time, infantry divisions was stationed there. They called it the 2nd Infantry Division. You would be familiar with the iron, the Indian head on the shoulders, and that was the icon that they used. As you know, when you were in the military, and Andrew can vouch this out, and you start off at an E1, and within 18 months I had made it to PFC 1, first class. Over in Korea, I was able to get to specialist 4th class, or literal almost what they call the sergeant. They said if I enlisted for 3 more years, they would make me a staff sergeant, of course. After almost 3 years, I changed my mind about that. After leaving Korea, I was then reassigned to Fort Hood, Texas, which is the world's largest armored military station. I went there as head of their finance department at Fort Hood, Texas, and I did quite well there. I was able to work with the group there, and matter of fact, I got a recognition from the Department of Defense when the group that I was leading in the finance section got recognized for one of the most outstanding, or the most outstanding input. Back in those days, you were using the punch cards for the computer. Of course, up until now, I'm literally not too bright with the computer. But this is information that is input from the subdivisions down into Texas. As you know, it's right outside of Killeen, Texas. Fort Hood is. There was a terrible slaughter there, as many of us remember a few years ago. But I was recognized there. I spent 18 months at Fort Hood, Texas. Quite interesting. Learned a lot. It brought me the discipline that I've been able to carry throughout my life. And I said, well, this is enough for now, and I will not re-up, as I can tell you what that means. I had enough of that, and I came back home to Cayman, and that was it. Worked with my family, and my father had cattle, and as
you became
a farmer, and up until now, some of the politicians, when I was first running, they don't know where that farmer going. But I was successful, and as all of you know, for the last almost 3 decades, 28 plus years, I spent in the Legislative Assembly, 3 of them as cabinet minister, and I was very proud of the accomplishments, what I was able to do with the health services, and built a brand new hospital, new health centres in the district, and the rehab facility up at Breakers, and the rebuilding and the senior citizens room in West Bay. And when you work in put people first, it's amazing how wonderful it is, and I've been blessed.
You know, I have to ask this question. How much influence did your military experience have on, let's say, your political life?
My political life. My first cousin, our first national hero, Jim Borden, was my first cousin. Mm-hmm. My wonderful wife, father, the Honourable Haig Borden, he was a politician. He was Deputy Speaker of the House, Cabinet Minister. I literally had no choice. As you know, toward the last days, my father-in-law and I ran together, and Mr. Roy Borden, and we were in there. But the discipline brought me back to what we were all talking about. It focuses you. It gives you the meaning of time and how to utilize that time to the best. And in my instance, always try to do what was best for the people.
And what you may not recognize is the ability to inspire others to come to your cause. That's leadership.
Thank you very much. And, in a district, I was told that I was to run, and if I wanted to run back in those days, I could win a seat. So I'm not bragging about that, as anyone knows that I'm just a simple farmer up in Lower Valley. But it goes to show I didn't realize the impact that I've had on so many people, not only in Cayman. These are people, if you see what the PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, the lady that was in charge of that, and I was there, Dr. Kumar, and I went over there, and Miss Bryan, who was the most wonderful civil servant that I've ever worked with. She was my chief officer. The things that we got accomplished by taking politics out of business. I was able to be blessed. Remember how many times they tried to build a hospital facility, and every time the government changed, it's quashed. The Lord gave me 2 consecutive terms, was able to build that facility. Opened in the mid-90s, latter 90s, and it's about the people. It's so simple, and I don't understand why politicians don't understand that.
But, it comes back to focus. In your military, you was focused.
Yes, you had to be, because at times, as you know, it's life or death.
Yes. Yeah.
Life or death.
Yeah.
Many times.
Well, many times, and and there, there's a lot of that military experience within the Cayman community that never really is tapped. The approach that someone from a military, at least exposure could bring and focus into to maybe get some things done. Mr. Eden, we surely appreciate you coming in. I'm sure Captain Banks, Dale Banks, is listening, and he's probably smiling. He says, "Well, finally corralled him."
Mr. Banks is just like you, Loxley, a wonderful person. Before I leave, this is back to my Seaman days there. I made so many good friends. Sidney Jackson, you all know him. Mr. Rupert E. Banks, he was such a wonderful person. He actually held devotional services on our transport, and whenever the opportunity presented, on the weekends and on Sundays and in the evenings, we would have read Bible and stuff. Also sailed with Mr. John Douglas, who is part of very important in the Seamen's Association. So the friends that you make and gather all through life, it goes, and it's a special feeling, especially those older ones.
You brought in the faith aspect there, and I recall, and I guess I must have been 6, 7 years old. I was going to Sunday school one morning, and my father I think this was probably right after he came back home from the war. He was sitting, laying his hammock, reading the Bible. And I don't know what was going through my mind, but I guess it was probably that he wasn't going to church. And I engaged, or tried to engage him in a conversation. And the question I asked, I'll never forget it. I said, do you all have church ownership? He said, yes, son. There are some of us who gather and, have church. Yeah. And we got a shortcut coming up here a little later. I think we'll be able to get it in, about the military and faith also.
Ooh.
So
everywhere we go, we have service.
Yeah, yes. So that's quite appropriate, because our faith is really the foundation of what we really got to stand on in any time.
As Andrew will tell you, most bases have their own chapel.
Oh yes.
And the chaplain goes with us.
Right.
They'll go right out in a tent and give service, or right out in the open and give service.
I was at Eglin Air Force Base for quite a while, which Captain Banks, Dale Banks served that also. And that's one of the biggest, I think, maybe Travis Air Force Base in California. They're both one of the biggest military facilities in the U.S. I guess we had about 6 different chapels there, and non-denominational. Or if you want to be denominational, you could go in there and do your faith and pray.
Ask a soldier if there's a God. We can tell you without the shadow of a doubt.
Amen.
That His hand comes down. The only way you can explain you're still alive is divine intervention. The guy next to you is dead and you're still breathing. There's only divine intervention between the two of you.
Well, and we invite the listeners to stay tuned for that. One of the cuts that we're going to try to get in, and it deals with soldiers' faith. And these are Caymanians talking about that. And Mr. Eden, I think you said that you have had to leave, so we're going to take a commercial break now, and you can sneak out on us.
And thank you for your service both in the military and in our government, sir. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Take care, and God bless us all. God bless Cayman. Amen. Thanks for inviting me, Mr. Lowesley. You take care and all the best. Thanks for all your efforts.
We're going to invite you again.
Savannah Pharmacy. Shop local and get a head start on your Christmas shopping. For ladies' handbags, clothes, shoes, fragrance, candles, and cosmetics with the newest Farmhouse Fresh line of skincare. For the gentlemen, clothes, shoes, fragrances, gift sets, and toys and games for the kids. Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs. And convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office. Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
Had a look at those investment options yet? Too busy. Look at today. Workout, breakfast, take the kids to school, back-to-back meetings, take Pepper to the vet, and she's apparently got allergies now, so... And that was all before 12. But you look relaxed. That's because my money's as busy as you.
With RF, you can access the best in local and international investments to keep your money busy, so you can spend more time focusing on you. Contact us at rfgroup.com to find out more. RF, money at work.
Here's where you can get your Rotary Central Music Extravaganza tickets to win $40,000 and more. Rotary members, authorized ticket sellers, eventpro.ky, A.L. Thompson's Home Depot, Funky Tanks, Rubis, Walker's Road. Here is where your support for Rotary Central Music Extravaganza works for our community. $50,000 committed to Loud Silent Voices, a mental health service, a Rotary Central signature project. The Lightning Cleanup Brigade at the Botanical Park after Tropical Storm Grace. $5,000 in support for the Cayman Islands Crisis Center. Support for the Bridge Foundation Halfway House. Supporting Bicycles for the Needy. Supporting the Cayman Islands National Disaster Fund. Rotary Music Extravaganza Community Service at its best. funding over 70 projects since 1995. Rotary Central, Cayman Islands, registered not-for-profit number 232. Rotary Central, serve to change lives.
The Cayman National Cultural Foundation is pleased to present My Art is My Life, an exhibition of the intuitive art of Cayman's own visionary, Miss Lassie. Visit Miss Lassie's home located at the intersection of Walkers Road and South Sound Road at the Mind's Eye Education Center to view these beautiful and inspired works of art. November 5th through the 13th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Admission is free, but donations are appreciated. Call 949-5477 or visit artscayman.org for more information. Made possible by the Ministry of Culture.
Get your running shoes on, ruffle your tail feathers, and prepare to work off that extra helping of turkey dinner while giving back in a big way this Thanksgiving season. Registration is now open for the 6th annual Meals on Wheels 5K Turkey Trot Fundraising Run Walk. Whether you run, jog, walk, waddle, or trot, come get active with us on Saturday, November 20th, starting and ending at Grand Ole House, South Church Street. Registration is open to all ages. Join our sponsors: Davenport Development, McAlpine, Grand Ole House, Western Resort, Progressive Distributors, Cafe Del Sol, and Radio Cayman as they support Meals on Wheels in the fight to end senior hunger in the Cayman Islands. Register today online at www.mealsonwheels.ky or call 769-1974 for more information. See you at the start line. It's the International Men's Day Island-wide sales event on Friday, November 19. Enjoy awesome savings and amazing deals from your favorite stores and service providers. Honor the positive contributions of men and boys while supporting local businesses in-store and online. Offers so incredible, you'll get something for the entire family. International Men's Day Island-wide sales event on Friday, November 19. Brought to you by the Family Resource Center and endorsed by the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce. Check out FRC's social media for a list of participating stores.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And we continue on with this CI Retro Talk Today presentation. We zero in on home soil. And we listen to former CI Home Guard member, the late Mr. Bob Soto, as he tells us briefly about his service in the Cayman Islands Home Guard during World War II.
Now, Bob, you were on home soil during World War II, that is, in the Home Guard. Tell us a little bit about your sacrifices and what you went through.
I remember the war breaking out, and I was 13 years old, I think it was. It was only one radio in my neighborhood, and that was Uncle Sade, we called him, Truman Bodden's grandfather. And all the old people would gather on the porch to hear the news from the BBC, what was happening in the war. And I used to go out and hang out with these old men to hear what was going on. I was very interested in what was going on. And then we started a campaign here to collect scrap to ship to England to help the war effort. We collected an old aluminum pots and let's ship some cannons from the old fort back to England to use in the war effort. All the older boys, my friends who was older, became of age and they started going off to the war, to America in the Merchant Marine or joining the armed forces. Trinidad people went off to join the Royal Naval Reserve. And then they started recruiting for the Home Guard. I was 16 years old and you had to be 18, but I was 6'1". So I went up there and volunteered. I told them I was 18 because I never had a birth certificate and they couldn't prove any difference. I was born in Cuba and came here when I was 2 years old, and I never got a birth certificate until 1947. So they couldn't dispute how old I was. And I got my mother to sign that I was 18. So I got in there and they wanted 70 men and they could have tripled it. So I was lucky to get in there, I thought. And they recruited 70 of us. And we had a Canadian sergeant instructor. And by that time we had a U.S. Navy base here with 50 sailors and 2 bombers stationed here doing patrol for submarines, because I seen ships get blown up right in front of Georgetown Harbor going by the submarine, and the submarine come on the surface and talk to the crew. And we never had a gun here to do anything. Some of our men went out on the Simboka to pick up the men, bring them in. We went in basic training for 3 months. We had rifles and Sten guns, call them Tommy guns or Sten gun, 30-round magazine. You could cut a coconut tree in two with it. We got had 2 field artillery pieces, 3-inch guns, and we had a lorry truck that could move them around the island wherever we needed them if it was needed. And we had some gun emplacements in Georgetown where we kept one in the gun emplacement right next to the public school. And across the street we had ammunition dump, or rifle ammunition. I did training in Jamaica with the British Army. I had 2 tours of duty over there over the years, and I took a course in artillery over there. I'd like to have been on the active army or the Air Force to do something more for the country, because Caymanians were patriotic and to the mother country, and I am still that way, even though our culture has changed over the recent years, but it hasn't changed me. I would like to see some of our younger people today step up to the plate. It's a very good thing to do, serve in the military. It taught me a lot, and I had those things that I have been a guide for my life ever since I served. We had stations, Northwest Point, Barkers, Northside, East End, Pedro Bluff, and 2 stations in Georgetown, plus the headquarters, and a central where we called in all the reports from the outer stations, and we would relay everything to the U.S. Navy. All the reports had to go to the U.S. Navy base all hours of the night. I remember one night I was working with Arthur E. Banks. He was in charge of the headquarters for central control, and I was working with him, and we had a report came in 2 o'clock in the morning that the station in Northwest Point called in. They had seen a rubber boat come in and put 2 people ashore, Northwest Point. So I went up there, and they had a little building at the gate. Man is always there 24 hours a day. And when I went there, he had a 45 out laying on the shelf with a little window like this, and he was sleeping. So I took the gun, pulled it off, and grabbed him and shook him. He jumped for the gun. I said, I got it here. I was scared if I woke him up, he would shoot me. So I said, I'm not going to tell anybody anything. So I had to go directly to the commanding officer, barracks, and wake him and give him the report, And then we all saddled up, went to West Bay all night in the mosquitoes, searching West Bay for these 2 men. Never found a thing.
Well, there you hear Mr. Bob Soda, and lots of folks will remember Bob, who passed away, I guess 3, 4, 5 years ago. Time moves by so fast, I can't even think of how long it was then. But he served in the Home Guard here, and a lot of other folks served in the Home Guard. I think there's one, Andrew, I believe, one Home Guard member that's still alive, and that is Mr. Haldane Bawden in the great
police of Bordentown.
Bordentown. How he may be listening. Hope you're doing okay. And it's but the Home Guard really served a great service here, or gave us a great service here in Cayman. As Bob mentioned, they had stations all around the perimeter of Cayman, and their primary purpose was to survey that horizon to see if there was any submarines, popping up there, and like he said, they notified the naval base, and then they would go out and dump the depth charges around them, and hopefully that they would neutralize them. But I don't know really how successful that whole operation was, but there was a lot of subs, menacing ships going by. One of the really busiest sea lanes. It's still the busiest sea lane, going by here. But Andrew has to leave us right after the news, so we're going to try to move on here now, actually back to the North Atlantic region, and hear from Mr. Caval Glidden in his journey across the vast oceans and his British Army experience.
Okay, so next clip, Mr. Lynn, for Mr. Caval. All right, so that's 01458. Mm-hmm. And now, Mr. Lochte, you've taken us across the region, across the North Atlantic. We've seen the service of our people across the wars, and even as far back as you referenced earlier, the Spanish-American War. No question that we are people who talk about, country above self.
Okay, I think we've got that cut up technology. Come on.
Keep up.
Yes, I remember when war was declared. Of course, we had been kept informed of the conditions in Europe, and I suppose many of us expected this. And it was very exciting to all of us when we learned that war had been declared by Britain against Germany. As I remember, there was a notice posted on the post office in West Bay saying that His Majesty's government had advised our Commissioner here that a state of war existed between his country and Germany. It was a very daunting experience to sail what they used to call the Western Ocean, that's the North Atlantic, in 1940. I mean, the convoys there, you know, you'd start out with a bunch of ships, and by the time you reached Europe, you know, there were just a few of them left. The days were usually calm and peaceful, but as soon as night came on, the submarines would start.
That's when the activity began.
That's when they started their activity. And you would see ships sinking all around you, you know, tankers blazing on the horizon, and you sort of wondered how long you would last. They sank one ship under me. Fortunately, none of the crew were lost. We all managed to get into the lifeboats, and next day we were picked up by a Norwegian ship. So they took us into Greenock, and that was the end of that voyage there.
Well, you did remark earlier that you embarked on this whole experience with great gusto. Now, you mentioned the German submarines and actually watching things happen, being under attack. Was there a time throughout your experience that you began to waver in your sort of commitment and determination?
No, I don't think so. We just went about our duties as if, you know, every day we did what we had to do and went along. And I never witnessed any fear on those ships. Everybody seemed to be fearless, well committed to the job at hand.
And your route, you always plied the North Atlantic at the start of this thing?
Yes, mostly in the North Atlantic. My first trip out of Britain really was into the Mediterranean, to Marseille, where we were caught in the air raids. That was just before the fall of France. And actually we evacuated British troops from there who had been chased all across France by the Germans.
The voice there of the late Mr. Cowell Glidden, whose ship during World War II, while sailing under the British Maritime Military Command, was torpedoed in the Atlantic Ocean, was rescued and taken to Greenock, England. He then joined the British Army and served in North Africa under Field Marshal General Montgomery until the end of the war.
Radio Cayman,
the voice,
the heart, the soul of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Chief Medical Officer Dr. John Lee announced the latest COVID results Thursday, November 12th. With 186 new positives, 2 are travelers and 184 are from the community. As of 8 a.m. Thursday, 15 COVID-19 patients were in the hospital, and more than 4,800 people are currently in isolation. In international news, the future of our planet has boiled down to one key thing at COP26. Who's going to pay for it? A huge gap remains between what different countries want on key issues, including how ambitious the world should be in slashing greenhouse gas emissions. In the fiercest opposition to the summit's draft agreement, Bolivia's chief negotiator, Diego Pacheco, said his country and 21 other allied nations, including major emitters like China, India, and Saudi Arabia, would oppose the entire section on climate change mitigation. He argued developing nations should not have the same targets as rich ones who have had a greater historical role in the climate crisis, and he accused rich nations of trying to, quote, transfer responsibility to the global south. Turkish authorities have stopped all citizens of Iraq, Syria, and Yemen from flying from Turkey to Belarus until further notice. Turkey's Civil Aviation Authority said it was because of illegal migrant crossings from Belarus into the European Union. The UN Security Council has accused Belarus of using the migrants to destabilize the EU's eastern border. A U.S. appeals court has temporarily denied a bid by U.S. Capitol riot investigators to access ex-President Donald Trump's White House records. Lawmakers are trying to find out if Mr. Trump had foreknowledge of the riot. Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building on January 6th as Congress was meeting to certify the election result. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And we're back, and we heard Mr. Covell's expressing what he went through during the World War II, and getting torpedoed and rescued, and then volunteer or go in the army.
That's dedication.
You're talking about Cayman gumption.
Dedicated to the cause.
And Mr. Cowell came back home, and he operated, Capital Traders in Georgetown, which was which was a big operation, and we had a lot of contact, he and I, and because he liked to tune into whatever was going on, the weather especially, and even up until today's weather report, I think you might hear the term, and the winds are calm. And when that ever came up, usually he'd call me up. He said, Loxley, if it's a calm, there ain't no wind. He was a great guy, and Andrew has to leave us here before long. So we're going to move on to DJ operation there to cut 0441. And this is a short one with Mr. Dalkeith Bodden, and telling us about his service time in the Royal Air Force in the U.S. or in UK. And we'll hear what he has to say. I think we got it up. So, DJ. And now, in this period of remembrance, when we remember the sacrifices and dedication of Caymanians who served under British and American and other free world countries' military commands, the Cayman Islands Veterans Association, Breeze Radio, and Radio Cayman present an excerpt from a CI Retro radio program which featured Mr. Dalkeith Bodden speaking about his experiences in the British Royal Air Force during World War II. And now we'll hear from Mr. Dalkeith Bodden.
On the 3rd of September 1939, I happened to be in Aruba, the Netherlands, West Indies. I was working there in an oil refinery. I had gone there in September 1938. And after war was declared, I left there in January 1940 to go to England and join the RAF. The first of my experiences were in England, really, because I went from Aruba to England and joined the RAF in London. And then I went to Morecambe in Lancashire for my disciplinary training. And then for technical training, I went to the RAF College, Engineering College in Cosford, near Wolverhampton. It used to really make me heartbroken, in a sense, to see the people, especially the women and little children, going down in the tubes at night to sleep down in the tube station. In fact, they slept there for months and months, and everything practically was rationed. But in the services, you didn't have too much worry about your food. People in civilian life still, they had a rough time, many of them, to get food and clothing, because clothing were rationed. And I know we used to have chocolate in the services, and boys, when they got to know that I didn't smoke, was try to get around and get my ration ticket. There are certain things around the world now that you never know where the next flare-up will be. And some of these flare-ups can ignite a huge battleground. However, we will hope for the best, that we never have to see another war. In Aruba, we had been following the war news in Europe on the radio, on the cinemas, in the cinemas,
Yeah.
And we saw how we used to watch it, and then we'd get the papers there and read them as well. So I knew all about it when it came along, and before it actually came to Britain joining. But after watching the destruction and the loss of lives and all the rest of it, in the next few months or a couple of months after that, I decided I would like to go across and do my little bit there.
The preceding is the Cayman Islands Veterans Association in cooperation with Breeze Radio and Radio Cayman presentation, highlighting the service of Caymanians during periods of great challenges to our freedoms and our democratic way of life. The speaker was Dalkeith Bodden, who served in Britain's Royal Air Force during World War II. Be sure to get your copy, and remember,
all gave some, and some gave all.
Well, that was Mr. Dalkeith Bodden account, the late Mr. Dalkeith, account of his, brief account of his service in the Royal Air Force. And I think he had a spell also in North Africa, I believe. I think he told me So it, and what we've actually heard, I guess, for the last hour and a half about, and we still got a few more to go here, a few more clips to go that tells you a bit about the Caymanian military man experience. I don't believe, Andrew, that we had any military ladies in the service during the war years, but I know there's some that's been serving and some who has served in the U.S. forces and maybe even the British forces.
Might have been some serving as nurses.
They could have been, but we have not been able to really ascertain that information. But Mr. Dalkeith mentioned his empathy with seeing the families have to go down. He mentioned the tube, and that is the underground railway stations to sleep, because that was, I guess, during the Blitz when the Germans was lobbing V2 rockets, bombs over the English Channel. And
we call them the innocents, and it's always the innocents that suffer.
Yeah, and of course he was in the Royal Air Force, and he was, I guess, you could basically compare it to what you were doing in the U.S. Marines later on, because he was in more or less maintenance, I think, keeping those...
keep those planes in the air.
Yeah, those, what was it, Lycoming, the engines, the reciprocal engines that they call Lycoming. Anyway, that was the manufacturer of very prominent aircraft engines during those years.
And we have so many regulations now that control aviation, and I love to tell my classes when I instruct that, when the war is on, a lot of those regulations don't mean a whole lot. You got to do what you got to do.
Even in
take that wing up and throw some more bombs underneath there, and he's gone again.
Even in training sorties, you run 15, 20 sorties in a matter of hour and a half, and they come back and we think this thing, well, you got to go back out,
Imagine all of us waiting for the planes, and everybody's rushing because you want to get them back, turn around as fast as you can with more bombs. But this one particular instance, everybody froze. Nobody would go near the plane. The pilot had taken a missile through his wing and landed with the missile in his wing. Obviously, the missile didn't go off, but the missile was still in his wing. Nobody knew what to do. What do you do? So it took a little while before we could get the ordnance people down there to make sure it was disarmed and get it out of the wing. The pilot, of course, he jumped out the plane real quick.
You're talking about a wing there. I know there was a real famous movie, I guess it was post-World War II, called The Wing and a Prayer. I don't know if you ever saw it. John Wayne, I think, played in John Wayne, and maybe James Stewart. It was about basically what you're saying. They're coming back with half their wings shut off, and two engines out, and the other one, operating at about half RPMs, and a wing and a prayer. And that's.
Some of them pilots are made out of steel.
Yeah,
made out of steel. Old pilot would come down smoking on his cigar, and he'd say, "I want to go out for a ride." And he looked, what plane is what plane you got ready? We don't have any ready, sir. They're all down for maintenance right now. Well, which one? They always have two engines. Which one's got a working engine? I'll take that one. He didn't need two engines. He just needed one engine.
Talking about that, when I was out on Johnston Island, and this is a 6,000-foot island, 2,500 foot wide, with a runway down one side and a taxiway on the other. And we had a flight of it was the British Vulcan bombers come in there, and there was about 6 of them in a flight. And I think they came across from California, so they were really at the empty level of their tanks. And approaching the island, they discussed, well, who's got the most? Let him stay, let him circle. And the last one that landed, his engine quit
on approach.
Yes, but he was able to glide it in, and when in fact, it stopped half the runway, because they didn't require a lot of runway. So actually, if they were going on a slow speed landing, he got out of the cockpit, and he walked over the end of the runway, which was the Ocean, and he took his cap off and took the sweat off his forehead and shook it off in the sea. He said, "Boy, I have been close ones, but because and there were some Caymanians who were flying. I think some of the bombers." Actually, in World War II, Halifax bomber during World War I and World War II. In fact, I believe he died in combat. So, Caymanians over the years have really, put everything they got on the line to defend freedom and to preserve it so that we here in the Cayman, not only Cayman, of course, there was a lot of people involved in this, but to preserve the freedom and democracy that we enjoy here today, and I think a lot of it is taken for granted. And I know, Andrew, you've got to push off to another commitment mission.
I'd like to thank my hosts for having us here, and I would just like to remind everybody to take a special moment this weekend. And like I said before, talk to Grandma, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad, and ask about the family's military history. You'll find somebody back there had served in the pursuit of freedom. But if you get a chance and you see a veteran out there, just give them a bump and say thank you for your service. Yeah, and they do it with nothing in return. We don't look for any special favors, any special retribution. We do it because it's a calling, as we said earlier. It's something that you have inside of you that you answer. You want to give something back. Both countries, United States and Cayman Islands, have been good to me, and I'm happy to be able to serve the U.S. the time that I did. And Grandma said from the time I was 5 years old, couldn't even reach this table here, and she said, "Son, you go wherever you want in this big world, and when you're done, come back home." And that's exactly what I did. And I'm happy to be here in a position where I can use my military experience to better the Cayman Islands. Yeah. Happy to be with you all. Thank you for having me today.
Well, and a lot of folks did just what you described there, and they're still coming back. Because I think this gentleman that I spoke with you just a couple of weeks ago, the Army veteran that I spoke with, young one, I think he has thoughts of coming back and serving the Cayman Islands community. And there's many who don't really want to. I don't know, the gentleman that we've been trying to get into the organization. I think he works right across the way here in government administration building. Ebanks, no Smith,
Chris from West Bay.
Yeah, and Chris, if you're listening, well, we need you.
Mr. Laxley, we're going to build that veteran center one day where we can preserve all the history that you have. Caymanians that have served. That's what we need.
Well, thank you for joining us here, and I think we're going to take a commercial break where you can sneak out, and we'll talk with you later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your service, Andrew.
Appreciate it.
We may be in Christmas shopping mode, but 'tis the flu season too. Savannah Pharmacy has immune system boosters for the entire family with a range of vitamins and supplements. Their knowledgeable and courteous pharmacists are always available to offer the best advice and products. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands. The ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom. The land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
We think it's time you crossed over to a new vehicle. And with the 2021 Toyota Corolla Cross now at Vant Motors, you have plenty of reasons to make the switch. The crossover body and hybrid engine is a sleek design in a sturdy structure with a spacious interior that opens to extensive cargo space. Stuck in traffic? The high-performance self-charging hybrid system automatically switches between gas and electric vehicle mode, helping you lower both fuel costs and carbon emissions. The Corolla Cross has full LED lighting inside and out, an integrated display audio system with energy monitor, and a dual-zone climate control system to ensure comfort for all. Test drive the new 2021 Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid today at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
New stock has just arrived at Super Stitch. Now don't take my word for it, drop by and see for yourself. Fresh off the boat, we have loads of fabric, vinyl upholstery fabric, fabric for cushions, outdoor fabrics, and dress fabric. That's not all. Super Stitch has sewing accessories and craft items. Included in the new shipment, you will find sheets, comforters, throw pillows, bath mats, rugs, and curtains for every room in your home. Super Stitch, 39 Pasadora Place, Smith Road. Still offering the best price in town. Call 949-2833 or go to superstitch.com.ky.
Brand Source Home Gallery is celebrating their 52nd anniversary with a 15% off store-wide sale this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday only. Yes, 15% off everything in store. Appliances, vanities, sinks, housewares, mattresses, plumbing fixtures, barbecue grills, and more. Brand Source Home Gallery store-wide sale, 3 days only. This Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Hurry! Don't miss this opportunity to save 15%. Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park. Call 949-5211.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255. Let your voice be heard. And now, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Yes, sir. Well, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us, and thanks too to Mr. Andrew McLaughlin and Mr. Anthony Eden for joining Mr. Loxley and myself, and to Mr. Loxley for not just his service to country, his continued diligence in promoting, preserving our history and reminding us of its importance. Mr. Loxley, these discussions have been not just educational and informative, but they've enlightened us as to the importance of where we are, why we are where we are, and what we need to do to ensure that future generations enjoy the freedoms, the privileges, the benefits that we have.
Well, what shall I say? It's, I think the Cayman Islands has a rich history, a rich heritage, which we have not really exposed the Cayman Island community to at the level that it should be.
Right.
And so the more this that we can do, I think the better off our whole community will be. And I guess we're going to try to get out of here pretty close to 2:30. So why don't we move on to another cut here? And I think the DJ has got that one queued up, and it should give you a clue as to what it is right at the top.
Well, certainly the military does bring you into between the lines and point you in the right direction, most of us.
But you're an army man too, but you haven't told us anything about yourself. I want to hear about you.
Well, U.S. Air Force, 4 years.
You were the Air Force too?
Air Force, 4 years, right. 56 to 60, and Operation Hardtack, and quite a number of other little scrummages.
Here from a report released some 50 years after the operation was completed, Operation Hardtack, conducted on Johnston Air Force Base on an island 6,000 feet long and 2,500 feet wide in the middle of the Pacific in 1958, was designed to have 3 exoatmospheric nuclear tests, each in the 3 to 5 megaton range, detonated some 6 miles above ground zero where we were at, to see the effect of a high level of heat and fission injected in the ionosphere. The first test exploded a lot closer to ground zero than was planned, thus injecting a high level of nuclear radiation at ground zero. The second test went pretty much as planned and knocked out communications between the East and West for some 36 hours, causing great concern at the Pentagon and other operational centers. After many anxious hours, communications began to be restored, and the first message received on Johnston Island Air Force Base, where we were at, from the Pentagon was, "Are you still there?" In the immediate after the second shot, the third test was cancelled as the Western Allies and the Soviet Union entered into a nuclear moratorium, and there's a big story to that. A footnote here, the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan during World War II was 150,000 tons, compared to Operation Hardtack's 3 to 5 megatons.
But that was during the Cold War, and it was as difficult to keep the peace as it is to win the war.
Yeah.
And the Cold War was fought actually between the ears, in the mind, because the only thing that kept everybody at bay was that Russia knew that if they started anything, the U.S. could wipe them off the map in 2.5 hours, and the U.S. had the same knowledge, so everything was kind of equalized. Freedom isn't free.
It isn't free. Somebody has to make the sacrifice.
I think strength is the only thing that is going to protect us. It was only when President Reagan decided that the U.S. was going to become strong enough that they can whip anybody in the world, the whole world together if need be.
Well,
that the Soviet Union started to collapse.
And welcome back, and thanks for listening to that. Now, Mr. Loxley, we look at just the last comment where we talk about political leadership in democracies, not being bullying, but not being bullied, standing its ground, not as an aggressor, but as a defender, but also being proactive to say, listen, we're going to commit to ensuring peace and as tranquil as we can for our citizens, but for the globe, to where now everybody's pandering and placating. But then think back to the declassified information of what transpired in Johnston Island, the size or the strength of that detonation versus what we all know in Hiroshima with that bombing. Devastation, had they, detonated a much larger, ordnance, what potentially could have happened, not just to Japan and the surrounding areas, but to even far afield.
And thinking about the nuclear arsenal of all the nuclear powers in the world, Lord, and the thing about it is, we did 2 shots over there, and the first one, the guidance on it didn't go as planned, and it exploded. It was detonated a lot closer to ground level, ground zero where we were at, and the heat that I felt from that detonation in the atmosphere was like if you were in a small 14 by 10 room and the room was afire both sides, what I would imagine that you would feel if you tried to run through that. And
intensity.
Yeah. It actually, I tell you, well, I said we did 3 shots, the 2 shot. The second one, actually, we put some colored gases that would illuminate, I guess you could call it, or give you some contrast in what was happening up in the atmosphere.
Akin to dye in water sort of deal.
Yeah. And it was one of the most amazing sights, I think, that I have ever witnessed in the world. And just to give you some context, Hawaii was 950 miles away. And the first shot that we did, they panicked. They had a panic up there. Everybody thought that it was another World War II, the 1942 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The second one, well, on the first one, we didn't give any notice. On the second one, we gave notice, this is going to happen within a certain time period. And they had gridlock in Hawaii because everybody was trying to get to the beaches where they could see this thing. But anyway,
we'll move on. It was quite an experience that,
That's a beautiful firework, huh?
Oh, it was a beautiful. Well, it was in the megaton explosion.
Yeah.
So, and just a connection with that, what we learned there, 6 months later, 9 months later, I was at Eglin Air Force Base, helping with a missile that we call the Quail missile, which was a missile that, actually it was developed for the B-52. When they were going into enemy territory, they'd launch it and it would supposedly confuse all of the radar, all of the defense that they had. And that came out of that, those shots in the atmosphere development where, communications was knocked out for 36 hours. And I think was mentioned, the first word that came through from the Pentagon to Johnston Island after communications had been restored was, "Are you still there?" So you can judge by that what their concerns were.
Yeah. But it shows too how sometimes the bean counters, the pencil pushers, those who are in the rooms making decisions don't always understand that those on the front lines, the real front lines, are being sacrificed, are being the true heroes in offering themselves to volunteer to get the data firsthand, to encounter the transaction firsthand. Yeah. Real lives are being affected.
Well, we're going to move on here to the last cut, which has to do with, and we mentioned it earlier, how much your faith plays in all of these situations, whatever they are, and not only military situations, but it applies to all our life situations. So, DJ, I think that's the 1497, hopefully.
One thing I'd like to just ask you here. I think we all come from Christian homes, brought up in Christian homes. How important did our faith play in our existence within those kind of environments? Captain?
Well, they say there are no heathens in foxholes. It plays a big part, on the other hand, you got to realize too that, for instance, there are other religions. If you're killed in the line of duty, let's say, you're going to go straight to heaven where you're going to have 72 virgins waiting for you or something, which would seem to me makes it a lot easier to die. If you're a Christian, you're not quite sure where you go.
You don't believe that if you're a Christian. Well, I'm very proud of my faith, and when I think back that out of the 70 men that I've served with, there was 65 men that's gone on, and for their yesterday, they gave their yesterday so we may have our tomorrow.
Shane, you got anything?
I'd say the truth. I had my come to Jesus experience as a young soldier in Africa. First time I ever went to that part of the world. It was just a short deployment just to do an evacuation of U.S. embassy personnel in the Ivory Coast. Really didn't think we were going to get back out of there. And I remember the platoon sergeant saying, "All right, guys, let's pray." And we prayed before we left the compound to get back to the airfield. And from then on, I was a believer.
It works.
Yes, sir.
Andrew?
In the Marines, it starts in recruit training. There's a very strong religious influence in recruit training. The Marine Corps motto that goes back to the beginning of the Corps is Semper Fidelis, always faithful to, number one, God, your Corps, and your country. And we instill that in each and every Marine. Like the captain said, there can't be no atheists down in a foxhole. Another big influence that they couple along with religion is Mama. Yes. Never forget, she's the one that got you this far.
That's right.
And you owe her a lot.
And we dare not forget their old dad.
I think the military certainly places a great emphasis on your spiritual well-being. You'll find, I'm assuming that most of the branches, or all the branches, in certain Air Force, the units are accompanied by a chaplain, or at least one chaplain, a non-denominational chaplain, a chaplain nevertheless.
Well, even in training, that was one of the things that they, on Sundays, they said, you have to go to chapel. Yep. It was a a demand. I mean, you got up early and you went to chapel, and then you pounded the ground for the rest of the day.
Yeah, we were all marched into the Presbyterian Church, all 70 of us. We were in boot camp.
Members of the Cayman Islands Veterans Association discussing there the role that faith plays in military situations, combat and dangerous assignment.
And I think, Mr. Locke, as we listen to that, the range of expertise and experience, but the range of service, and as reflected in the years of the voices we heard, young Mr. Bothwell, if you'll allow me to call him that, in the council of Mr. Soda and Captain Dale and yourself, from the 1990s back to, the wars of Korea, Vietnam, World War II. That is a long span of time, but connected by two things: a strong faith and service to God and country, and a sense of duty and obligation to preserve and protect and promoting freedoms and democracies. We seem not to have that level of faith anymore, I wonder.
Well, yeah, I think the society has regressed in that aspect. Of course, change is the only thing that we can be sure of. But I think any society has to make sure that change is balanced. And I would venture to say that our changes, what's this? And this is 2021. I'd say from 60 to us 40 and to 60, so over the last 60, 65 years, that it has kind of got out of balance. And hopefully that somehow we can make some corrective, take course correction and get it, regain a little bit of it. I mean, years ago, Sunday mornings, you would hear the church bells chime in all over the island, various countries, and every church had a bell. You could tell which bell it was or what church it was. And some years ago, I was talking to a preacher, and I think it was the preacher from the Pilgrim Holiness Church, and we were talking about that. Well, he related to me. He said, we don't. I think he told me, and I don't think they ring the bell anymore. We had to cut it out, or had to reduce it or something, because we were getting complaints from people who had come to the island now to maybe wanting to integrate or maybe not wanting to integrate within the society, complaining about the church bells ringing on Sunday morning,
disturbing them.
Yeah.
But yet we've traveled, but we also know people from those countries where that ringing on certain occasion is not only expected, but it is almost required.
It's the fabric of the community.
It's a fabric of, and it may signify some event, the funeral procession. It may celebrate a religious occasion, or it could just be that church service is starting. And this is not, third world countries that are primitive. This is modern societies.
Yes. Italy especially, you hear bells all ringing all over the place. And London.
Yeah, I was thinking of those two countries in particular.
And I think in a lot of the other European countries, it's quite prevalent.
Yeah, but I commend you for being a stalwart and so diligently causing the Cayman community, Caymanians of ancestral links, Caymanians of decades of having acquired citizenship, and those who are new to our shores, and those who will come because they contribute and they're also looking for a better life for them and their families, to do one thing: find a way to come together and to respect what is it that is here and improve and build upon it.
What made us what we are, what's here.
Yeah, because you that tree in your yard that provides shade, or that fruit that you like, you don't chop it down to get the fruit at the top, and you don't destroy it in the process, but you respect it, you water it, you nurture it, you pay attention to it, and
you get a crutch stick and
you get
get the fruit set up on the top.
And you probably also tell your children and your neighbors the importance of that tree and why it means something, and you show a sense of appreciation for it. Well, we talk about killing the goose that laid the golden egg, but let's if we want the fruit, if we take care of the tree, the fruit will feed us.
Yes.
Well, this weekend means a lot to many of us. It means even more for some than they share. And as we wear, the poppy, we do so because we have the courage and the tenacity to say what it means.
Demonstrate what it means.
And to stand for what it means respectfully. Because in that respect, we shall be honorable to those who've gone before.
And keep the preservation of democracy and freedom going.
Yes, sir. You've encouraged me, sir. You've reminded me that too much is given, much is required. And I think of us now that this is the time to heed the call and to stand in the gap.
Big gap.
Big gap. Big shoes to fill. There are men and women who've gone on and those who yet to serve. Blessings to you, sir. God continue to be you with that strength. I was thinking, as we listen to that clip from Johnston Island, that maybe the radiation has made you the Superman. Well, God bless you, sir, and your efforts.
Thank you, and thanks for listening, and keep listening.
All right. Well, Monday is Remembrance Day, as we invite you to celebrate the holiday reverently and with a healthy sense of respect, but also responsibility for what it is, irrespective of your ideologies, your religious, political persuasion, whatever it is that you think may separate you, use that to your strength. We are more alike than we are different. Have a wonderful, blessed, safe, productive, enjoyable weekend. For those who pray earnestly. For those who subscribe to the notion of higher power, be imbued with that spirit that brings you forward.
Our thanks to DJ over there on the controls. A little technical difficulties, but we overcame it. Thanks, DJ. And
from the music he plays, and even along with JJ and the rest of the crew, to the notion that we have a good team here at Radio Cayman. So until we meet again, blessings to all, one and like.
Have a good day.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in country.